Aasiya Hassan seemed the picture of the modern Muslim-American career woman. In photos, she wears a smart business suit, regal red lipstick, and a confident smile. Her wavy black shoulder-length hair is left uncovered, and there's a sparkle in her eyes that confirms stories by friends and colleagues that she was a bright and warm woman. Aasiya came from a well-to-do family in Pakistan. She studied at the best schools, and after college was a successful architect. In 2000, she immigrated to upstate New York to be with her husband, a businessman who had immigrated years before. After the attacks of September 11th, Aasiya felt that America needed to see Muslims in a more accurate and fair light, so she proposed creating a TV channel that would do just that. Her husband jumped at her suggestion, and Bridges TV was born. The couple worked closely on programming for the channel, and to many outsiders, their professional collaborations suggested domestic harmony. But this was not the case.
Shock and horror have been expressed by many this week over the killing of Aasiya Hassan. Ms. Hassan was found beheaded at the offices of Bridges TV in upstate New York. She and her husband had launched the station near Buffalo, New York, to help bridge the cultural divide between Muslims and non-Muslims. Her husband has been charged with second-degree murder in her killing.
That report was heard on National Public Radio after Aasiya's murder on February 12, 2009. Her husband turned himself in to authorities after he killed her. The murder was just the last fatal act in a continuum of violence. The police had come to Aasiya's house many times over the years in response to her calls for help. Aasiya had filed several protective orders against her husband, and a week before her death had filed for divorce too. But the protective orders did not protect her, and her marriage ended more brutally than anyone could have expected. Aasiya's tragic death has served as a kind of wake-up call for Muslim Americans to talk frankly and openly about the problem of domestic violence in their community. It also offers advocates committed to ending domestic violence a chance to better understand the need for culturally sensitive outreach efforts. It's important for these advocates to understand that 1, many Muslim victims of violence fear being socially stigmatized after reporting their abuse or leaving their abuser. 2, many are immigrants who don't know their legal rights. And 3, many Muslim victims misunderstand Islam, so they don't know that their own religion preaches that they have the right to be free from violence at home. Razan Fayez is the family law attorney for the Tahirih Justice Center in Virginia. The center helps immigrant women and girls sort through their immigration and family law issues, and helps them access social services. Fayez has worked with a number of Muslim clients.
The biggest issue, I think, is the stigma that they believe will come along with the fact that they're getting divorced or choosing to leave their husband or the abuser. I think that's the biggest thing, is they struggle with sometimes the family not approving of them doing that. I think eventually they come around and they support that, but I think it's hard to make that leap to move and take your kids with you when you're going to face that stigma. I think that's the biggest thing.
Salma Abu Juderi agrees. Abu Juderi is a therapist working in the suburbs of D.C. She's counseled many Muslim women who are survivors of domestic violence. She stresses that when trying to help, domestic violence advocates must keep the patient's priorities in mind.
The goal for a Muslim woman is generally not divorce, but the goal is to end the violence. And one of the reasons Muslim women might not go to mainstream organizations is because they think divorce is going to be pushed. So I try to frame interventions around safety and focus on, how can we make you safe? How can we make your children safe? Instead of, how can we get you to leave? And how can we get you to divorce your husband? So it's a completely different conversation. It might end up in the same place, but it's got to be sort of framed around a common goal, which is going to be safety and no violence.
Abu Juderi is also the co-director of Peaceful Families Project. The project is based in Virginia, and it offers workshops to mainstream domestic violence groups to help them be more sensitive to the needs of Muslim victims of violence. The workshops are day-long affairs and begin with Abu Juderi encouraging advocates to set aside stereotypes that may prevent them from building trust with their Muslim clients. She also suggests things battered women's shelters can do to help Muslim survivors feel more welcome.
Be attuned to the fact that many Muslim women really value their privacy and modesty, and they may not be comfortable changing in front of other people, for example, or just having a corner that's set aside where a woman could be told that if she prays, she could pray in that space.
By demonstrating this kind of understanding, mainstream organizations may be better able to assist Muslim victims of domestic violence. In addition to showing cultural sensitivity, it's important for mainstream organizations to understand the unique legal issues that may come up in cases involving Muslims. Fayez, the family law attorney with the Tahrir Justice Center, says Islamic marriage contracts in particular present common dilemmas. The practice of forming individualized marriage contracts between Muslim couples goes back hundreds of years. These contracts certify that the marriage is Islamically sound and often stipulate other agreed-upon terms for the marriage going forward. One common provision regards the meher, which is a mandatory gift the groom gives the bride. The meher can be a sum of money, a piece of jewelry, property, gold coins, or something less valuable and more symbolic. Some grooms give their brides the meher when the marriage takes place, but others promise to give it later. If the marriage leads to divorce, the wife can sue for the meher if she hasn't received it yet, since it was promised to her in the marriage contract.
I actually had somebody who just agreed to pay her the meher in the separation agreement, which was a very, very big chunk of change. It was, $300,000. That's a lot of money for somebody who doesn't have a job, but he's going to be paying it very slowly. And that's a huge thing for us, because if we went to court, he has no property, she would never get alimony. So that's, I think, a really big difference, is that they come to us and they're like, look, I have this Islamic contract, is it enforceable? And a lot of times it's not, because it's poorly written.
Fayez says one thing attorneys can do is help Muslim couples write marriage contracts that can actually be enforced in court. A 2007 survey by the Pew Research Center found that roughly 2/3 of adult Muslims in the U.S. were born elsewhere. A relatively large proportion of Muslim immigrants are from Middle Eastern countries, but really Muslim immigrants hail from every corner of the globe. Therefore, many Muslim American women seeking to escape domestic violence must be counseled on immigration issues. Manar Waheed works in the family law unit of Staten Island Legal Aid. She deals almost exclusively with clients who have experienced domestic violence.
There's a lot of complications to the immigration law depending on how you came into the country. And if you came in either without papers or you overstayed your visas, you don't have as many options. But if you're a domestic violence victim, then you have a ton more options, because there are other exceptions over the last 10 years or so.
One recent development is the Violence Against Women Act, or VAWA. Under this law, if an immigrant victim is married to a legal permanent resident or a citizen, she can petition for her green card or citizenship without her husband's signature, consent, or support. Nothing has to go through him at all. However, if the immigrant victim is either not married to her abuser or her abuser isn't a legal permanent resident or citizen, VAWA doesn't offer her any protection. She may instead seek legal immigration status for herself by filing for a U visa. The U visa gives victims of certain crimes temporary legal status and allows them to work in the U.S. for up to 4 years. A victim must assist the government with its investigation of the crime. If she does, then the government will issue a certification that she assisted, and this will become part of her U visa application. Again, Manar Waheed.
If you're a victim of a crime and you assist with a criminal matter, that would be your certification from the DA's office. With the Administration for Children's Services, it's assisting them in an investigation. Anyone can call into ACS and make an allegation of abuse or neglect, and they are obligated to follow through on it. So we also see batterers doing that to their wives or ex-girlfriends, just to kind of harass them and torture them more.
Harassment over an immigrant woman's legal status in this country is also common, according to Selma Abu Judairi of the Peaceful Families Project.
I think that the way immigrant Muslims might sort of manifest domestic violence is very similar to other immigrant groups, where a lot of times it's related to their immigration status, where they're threatened with deportation, or they're threatened to be reported to the authorities for something, or they're basically being controlled by misinformation about the legal system and even misinformation about American culture. I had one woman whose husband brought her here and then told her that Americans are all evil and they will hurt you, so don't step out of the house or you'll be killed by an American. And having never left her village, she believed that, and she basically, that was the way he was able to keep her isolated.
It's been established that Muslim victims of domestic abuse face unique challenges due to cultural pressures and immigration complications. But then there's the added piece of religious abuse. Abusers may misuse Islamic teachings to control and manipulate their victims. Muhammad Majid is the imam or religious leader of the All-Dulles Area Muslim Society in Sterling, Virginia. He's also the vice president of the Islamic Society of North America, the country's largest Muslim organization, and is a vocal opponent of domestic violence and spiritual abuse.
What I mean by spiritual abuse is a man telling a woman that you're going to go to hellfire if you don't listen to me, if you don't come to my bed, you will be cursed. If you don't cook for me, Allah will not be pleased with you. More women going to hellfire than men. All kinds of stuff that is really putting a woman down in a spiritual sense. Therefore, she feels like a person have used the religion to have had to feel less loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that religious superiority is completely wrong. It's un-Islamic, it's anti-Quranic, it's anti-teaching of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
That may be clear to Imam Majid, but there are many lay Muslims and some scholars who are confused about how Islam views a man who beats his wife. They point to chapter 4, verse 34 in the Quran, which read literally says that a man has the right to lightly beat his wife. Imam Majid disagrees with the literal reading of that verse. Instead, he directs Muslims to take a holistic view of the religion's teachings.
I think Islam is about morality. You have to remember that the purpose of religion is to establish moral code. And the moral code here is to differentiate between right and wrong and to bring about a clear understanding of what are your core values that you live your life with. Therefore, what we do is that we need to emphasize in the amount of literature, tremendous amount of literature and texts, whether in the Quran or in the saying of the Prophet ﷺ, that talks about loving for your fellow human being what you love for yourself is a sign of faith. The list of saying of the Prophet ﷺ, defining who's Muslim is, يقول صلى الله عليه وسلم, says in the Arabic, المسلم من سلم المسلمون من لسانه ويده. A true Muslim is a person that feels safe from their hand and their tongue, which is verbal abuse, physical abuse, ﷺ said. And he says, Al-mu'min man aminahu an-nas. A man of faith, a woman of faith, is a person that feels secure in his present or her present. This is what it's all about.
He also reminds Muslims that they are to follow in the example of the Prophet Muhammad, and that the Prophet never abused women or children. When reflecting on the tragic death of Aasiya Hassan, Imam Majid says his one hope is that it encourages people to reach out to women when they suspect they are being abused at home. He acknowledges that many Muslims come from cultures that promote keeping a good public face by hiding private shame. People from these cultures may also think that it's rude to inquire about intimate family matters, including abuse, even if they're concerned about the victim's well-being. But the Imam emphasizes that not taking action when witnessing abuse, or staying with someone despite the abuse, does not accord with Islam's sense of justice.
If we make it clear to people, if we to abuse your wife, it's a business of every person in the community. It is not a private matter. It is a matter of justice, a matter of human rights, and for the community to look at it as such that itself will prevent abuse, because will be all over your business. And the sister should not believe it's a private matter. It's a matter of justice.
For more information about the Tahrir Justice Center, Peaceful Families Project, and the Islamic Society of North America, please visit the Documentaries in the Law page on the Penn Law website. That's law.upenn.edu. For the Documentaries in the Law project at Penn Law School, I'm Asra Syed.